Hey everybody, welcome back. We've got our coffee. Welcome to the talk. Today I want to talk about kind of a sense of desperation in America. It seems to really pervade all classes except for the very top, really all ethno groups, all corners of our country. And in this desperation really seems to come from a sentiment. And the sentiment, I think, is that you're not supposed to succeed in America. And the way that a country has been built, I don't think that we are supposed to succeed in this country anymore. I don't think that it's built that way. You know, we say it's the free market. It's a free marketplace. But I think this country has become too much of a marketplace and not so much a country or a culture. This country doesn't serve its own people. I don't think it's meant to serve its people for a while now. And I think that's one of the reasons that you can see like immigrants coming in and doing so well opposed to people who are born in this country. And that's not a statement of ignorance. It's not a statement of, hate or anything like that. I think it's just a reality. And I think that this is also more of a cultural thing than anything else, because, a lot of immigrants tend to come from more kind of conservative, more traditional cultures. So they don't really seem to go through the same kind of loneliness, the same kind of isolation that most Americans do. There isn't always a burden of negativity that weighs on their shoulders, that hangs over their neck, kind of a sword of Damocles. But at the same time, immigrants in America tend to be forced with the situation that they have no choice but to succeed. And I think that this is a kind of a mentality that Americans have lost. We call ourselves a nation of immigrants, and while some people will challenge that and say that this country is meant for Americans. Americans have, in a way, always been immigrants. The vast majority of people in this country really can't trace their lineage back to the, original colonies, except for the most part, Black Americans. Black Americans have more of a historical anchoring to early America than most white Americans do. Most Americans at this point won't really consider themselves just Americans. They'll look to their past and say, my family came from England, my family came from Poland. Because I think that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when you started getting massive waves of European immigrants to America, I think it really changed the idea of what it is to be an American. It was more of an immigrant perspective. And I think that for some reason, a lot of people forgot that they came from that. It's more of a sense of entitlement towards your country now, more of a sense of, what I'm owed by this country. And you don't really get that with immigrants as much. And maybe it's incorrect for me to, put all immigrants in the same boat. And I don't mean to do that, because you have those who come in with financial means and, buy up properties and start businesses and really outperform local residents, outperform local citizens. And, we get this in other countries, then Americans do this. We use the strength of the US dollar to go into places and conduct business, or to buy homes and, put them up for rent, do our Airbnbs and things like this. This is, of course, a problem everywhere. So it's not something that's particularly unique to America, because it is happening everywhere. But if you are from America, I guess what you really need to ask yourself is, why does it seem so hard for me? Why does it feel like the system is built to keep me down? Why can't I have a house? Why do I feel like I can barely survive paycheck to paycheck? Because at this point, it feels like our country is against me. And I think that that's a valid thing to say at this point, because a country does owe its first responsibility to its own citizens. But these days, it does feel like the definition of citizen has been redefined to more of a global citizen than, a national citizen. In America, being a free global market doesn't mean that the only participants in that market are going to be American. So when you have people with assets, people with talent, people with, higher degrees and certifications, work experience, then a majority of the residents, of course, it's going to be built to the advantage of immigrants. So our country isn't strictly meant for Americans to succeed. And while you can say, yes, it is a free market, and yes, that is fair, I don't think people actually want their country to be nothing more than a market. I think that they want their country to have some kind of sense of nationhood, a sense of individual culture, that we can all kind of rally behind and say, this is us, and that we can hold our government accountable to make sure that it's benefiting us before it is anyone else. And some people would call that fascism, I think, in today's kind of political parlance. But I don't think that it is. I think it's like it's a natural feeling for people want to be represented and people wanted to be backed up by their own government. But of course, looking through history, that's never really been the case. This may have been at one point a country made for the people by the people, but at some point that's gone away, and it's just nothing but for the interest of the elite corporations and the higher political class. So now they're the ones who are meant to succeed. They're the ones who are meant to reap all the benefits of America's bounty, of which there is much bounty. We look at our country and we see scarcity, but the fact is that this is a country that's built on largesse of resources, whether that's natural, whether that's intellectual. And the access of those resources, it's really no longer possible for normal people, right? It's only possible if you have a serious amount of finances that you can leverage to gain access to these things, to gain access to not just to purchase, but through the legal ability to put pressure on to leverage against politicians to get what you need. And this is out of the kind of the personal hands of the average citizen. It does cause a large amount of desperation. It does make people think that they're not being represented, that they're not being looked after. And there's a consequence to that. I think that the consequence that we're seeing with that is the fact that most people aren't considering themselves too much American anymore. And when they do consider themselves American, it's usually on the days where they're celebrating kind of an older kind of America that doesn't exist anymore. Because when you look around you in America now, all you see is kind of a crumbling empire. At first, when you look at it, it's quite nice. The homes are large, big yards. Everyone has cars. And while you say like these could be markers of success, are they though? I think in comparison to a third world country, yeah, I mean, you're successful, but at the same time, I feel like it's just a shattered facade that's being held together, with a glue of identity. Because as costs keep going up, as the cost of living keep going up, as wages are stagnant, at some point that facade's going to fall off, and that sick man of the West that is hidden underneath that is going to be exposed. I mean, look at the insanity that we see on the media. There's no cohesion. There's no central idea of the direction for our country. We don't know what way we should be going. All we know is that we're existing now. In the American story and where we're at now, where is our next point that we're going? Because it doesn't feel like we have any real direction in general. One side will say, we need to hold on to traditionalism. We need to hold on to what was. And I think that in a time of confusion, and things are kind of hanging on the precipice, I think that it's important to kind of fall back to maybe your foundational beliefs to really kind of assess things. And I think that that's what a lot of kind of more conservative-minded people believe. And the other side of that, of course, is, to be progressive, our country needs to be in a progressive footing. But at the same time, that kind of progression has never been well defined. What direction are we? We're trying to go in this direction, but where's the goal? It's like going into the mountains and hiking, but not having any kind of destination, just wandering into the woods. And anyone who's watched enough survival shows says that usually is going to mean certain death. It doesn't seem like we have a plan. It doesn't seem like we have a goal. It seems like our country is just moving forward, but forward into what destination? Because the idea of that it's moving in a national direction really doesn't seem to make much sense. If we're moving in a corporate direction, if we're moving into a corporate direction of profit, that makes more sense. So a lot of people in the comments have been saying that, this is a country ran by oligarchs and corporations. Now, I don't think that there's any way that you can really argue against that at this point, because it's definitely not ran by a government that's serving the people, because a government that's serving the people wouldn't let the people suffer in the way that we are now. And people can say that there's always been a divide, there's always been, rich and poor, but I think that there's always been a kind of accessibility in our country. I think that there's always been a way for people to move into a direction where they can move up, where they can actually attain the goal that they've been striving for, that they've worked their entire lives for. Now, instead of that, what you're seeing is people having their homes that they've worked for their entire lives. And the property values have gone up so high that people can't, and the insurance rates have gone up so high that these people who work their entire life for this home no longer have a home. They have to leave, they have to downsize. They're forced out of the life that they've spent their entire lives building. And although in our country we have a lot of resentment towards kind of the older generations because they hold so much of the assets, at the same time we need to look at this and say, these are grandmas, these are grandmothers, these are grandfathers. And if this happened within your family, if you had a grandmother, if you had a grandfather, if you had grandparents and they were forced out of their home because the taxes got so high and the insurance got so high that they couldn't afford it on their 401k, they couldn't afford it with their Social Security, then the amount of stress that's going to fall onto you, because now you have two elderly people that are thrown into desperation, and in the familial unit, you have an obligation to take care of them. So now there's even more burden on you. There's more burden on the American family unit. And I guess you could be black-pilled and say that, oh, this is just, the way it's always supposed to be. No, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. People are supposed to be able to work and free themselves from the burden of work. The point of life isn't to work. The point of life is to live. But in America, in this country, a system has been constructed so the point of life isn't to live. The point of life is to work. The point of life is to produce, is to make profit. And that profit that you make isn't going to be for you. That profit that you make is going to either be for a corporation or, in the end, the government. So I think it's rich when I hear politicians and I hear corporate leaders, correct Americans for their disagreement with the system that's crushing them and challenge their patriotism, because the intentions of most people is just to live a life where they're not slaving away. It's to live a life of some kind of freedom. Not everyone wants a Lamborghini. Not everyone wants, a giant mansion. Most people just don't want to pay a mortgage. They want to be able to eat what they can eat, and they want to, and they want to be able to afford to see their children and their grandchildren grow and have the kind of lives that they wanted. And that's what America was. That's what we got to. America in its peak, I think that's what it was. But we're past the peak now and we're in the decline. Because I don't see a future for us and say that we're going up. I don't look at the direction that America or the West in general is going and say that it's going in a good direction, at least not for the people. If I was a corporation, I'd be very happy with the direction that the West is going, but I'm not a corporation and neither are you. In what way does this system, in what way do these governments serve us? The fact is they don't serve us. So I guess the next question is, what do we do? If we continue to participate in the system's only going to thrive. The system's only become stronger because profits are going to be made. But how do we rage against the system? How do you fight back against a system that's built to limit you? Because that's one of the questions I often get in my comment section is, you have so many complaints, but what do? Your choice is to run. I'm an individual. I'm not a politician. I'm not in politics. And even if I was in politics, I'm just an American. I'm an average person like you, or an American, or whoever you are, but you're more than likely just a normal average person. And I think to give up, put all your issues down to the side and say, we're just going to push through and I'm going to work the rest of my life for whatever meager gains that I can. And hopefully on my deathbed, I have people close to me because, I could afford to have a kid. I am soured by the reality that our nation has given us. I'm soured by the reality that most people are priced out of family, that most people are priced out of happiness. I'm soured by the fact that the American dream is dead. And while you can have a good life in other countries, you can go somewhere else and build yourself. The sad reality is that any kind of success that you have here is only going to be a fraction of what you actually want or what you actually deserve. Because as we've seen with inflation, once people start doing well, all they have to do is print enough money that, that financial power that you've gotten, that financial security that you've gotten, its real value is now cut in half. And now you're thrown into a position of desperation once again. So though you may have had time to protest, you may have had time to assess things and say something and maybe challenge the system a little bit because you have financial freedom. You can no longer do that. Now you're thrown back into desperation. Can I pay the rent? Can I pay my mortgage? Can I afford to feed my kids? I don't have time to worry about the political things. I just need to get back to work. And that's why I say the only way to fight against the system is to escape the system. It's no longer a rat race. It's people strapped to a treadmill and you're going to run yourself to death. So escape while you can. For me, I choose to get as much as I can out of this country and then leave. Because I've lived abroad before and I know how good life can be. Because I understand that the best life that I can have isn't in America. I understand that the best life that most people in America could have isn't in America. Is America a great country? Yes, it is great. It's great and terrible. And can you have an amazing life here? Yes, you can, if you can afford it. This is a large country. It's a very rich country. And if you are rich, it is a great country to be in. It has the very best healthcare that no one can afford. It has the best properties. It has the best land. It has the best road. It has the best cards. It has the best laws for the rich. So if you are wealthy, it's a fantastic place to be. If you're a normal person, it can be soul crushing. And as inflation continues, as the dollar is devalued more and more, and as people become more and more desperate, and the basic things that people usually work their life to gain become a fantasy, a laughable fantasy, the more you have to realize that whatever this country gave you, that whatever promises this country made you, whatever your ancestors paid into the system, what are the oaths the government made over the lives of your ancestors, over the lives of your forefathers who helped to build this country, that they've broken it. And you don't really have an obligation to serve this country anymore or to represent it anymore. If they want to redefine American citizens to be global citizens, then just become a global citizen. Find a way out of the country. If we're a nation of immigrants, let the exodus begin. And I think that that's what you're starting to see. I think that you're starting to see a lot of people. You can just look in the comment sections of any of my videos and you'll see people who are lining up their resources so they can leave this country and find a better life. And that's exactly what our ancestors did when they came here. Other than the Native Americans, there's nobody in the United States who are actually from here, right? You don't have a true ancestral tie here that goes for the vast majority of people beyond 100 years. Our ancestors came here looking for a better life. Our ancestors came here looking for what they couldn't get from the countries that they were in. That's the position that we're in now. So I guess it would only be natural for the next step is for people to start migrating once again. Take your resources somewhere else and build yourself up. It's absolutely possible. It's absolutely within the realm of reality for you to do so. And the only thing that stops most people is that there's a feeling that what they're doing is wrong. But was it wrong for your ancestors to come over here and to set up a life and to bring you into this world? Because that's what they did. You have to make the choice at some point. I have no problem immigrating to someplace else. Right? There's a lot of places out there that I've been to that I love. And I think for those that have traveled, they'll agree. There's places that they've been. And when they come back to America, it's quite depressing. It's quite depressing to come back to a place where there's just a general atmosphere of depression and anxiety and paranoia. There's just a general atmosphere of unhappiness. But in other parts of the world, they don't get that. And you can say, the rose-colored glasses of having US dollar in a third world country. But I'm not talking about third world countries. There's countries out there, there's places out there, there's people out there that think like you and want the same things that you want because we are basically human. So that's why I say, find your happiness. Don't think that you're too obligated to stay in this land. Don't think that you're too obligated to a country that doesn't really care about you anymore. A country that doesn't have your back anymore. Because in this country, even if you're doing the right thing, if the right thing goes against the wishes of the powerful, you're a traitor.